Welcome to 13. Let's go. So here we go. Last week's 13 was the problem. I won't go. If you watched it, you watched it. If you didn't, go watch that one first. But this week I said would be called The Solution. And, like I said, the solutions in many places will look different than other solutions. And a lot of the solutions, most of them actually that I've seen already, are not impressive. They don't encourage hustling. They encourage finding a medium rate to be an independent contractor, which takes away, again, it takes away from the whole independent contractor thing, because independent contractors in a real setting possess a set of skills. If that set of skills is rideshare. How long have you been doing it? Like with anybody, you would probably, if pre-gig apps, if you wanted to buy a taxi and run a 5-car taxi operation, and that was something you really wanted to do, what would you do first? You would go get a job as a taxi driver. You would learn the ins and outs. You would learn the ups and downs. You would talk to the other driver. You would do all of your research and a lot of firsthand stuff. Well, that's what the rideshare apps are. That's what the delivery apps are. And the pandemic was a huge onboarding of people who never really had the independent contractors setting in them. And there's nothing wrong with that. I've had many W-2s in my life. I'm sure many of you have. I've had salary. I've had hourly. I've had all kinds of different setups. My pay is offset because I have full medical coverage, this, that, the other. So a lot of trade-offs. But we have gig app platforms. So here's where we're at. We have gig app platforms violating every state's independent contractor law in the country. I did not say that incorrectly. Every single state's independent contractor law in the country is being violated by the gig apps. Some way more than others. DoorDash. Oh, I'm sorry, did I not make it clear? DoorDash. Biggest violator of them all. And I know many of you, that's the app you do. Last night I did a gig, not gig apps. I did an independent contractor gig in the production realm that I do a lot of work in, and made my money, and it had rained here in Denver. And as I was leaving, I noticed that the entire city was red, and I don't have the ability to dash now, being a bottom dasher. So I took that advantage because it was like plus $2, $3, $4 all over the city. My zone was like at, I think, 3. I never see that kind of thing. It was dash now, it was like super red. And I know that they trick you with that kind of stuff a lot, but I was like, well, with 4 on each, it's at least worth it. I'm going home. I wasn't tired. I actually ended up dashing for 3 hours, and I'll tell you this. The first thing I thought of was, at the end of the night, and again, guys, I don't count on DoorDash for those of you who are just joining or just getting used to the channel, just learning about it and trying to figure it out. I do all the apps, but I mostly do last mile these days. Used to only be rideshare because it only used to be rideshare. Now I do all the apps. I'd say 90% of the dashing I ever did was when we were testing Para. I was one of the first people on board to test Para on both times that the tip transparency ran. So I'm a bottom dasher. I stay under 20%. I really can't get above that. But last night, I thought, wow, in that 3 hours, I earned more hourly. And again, guys, I don't use dash time. Let me be very clear. I use real time always. So when I'm referring to time, if those of you who use the dash time method, first of all, I don't really get it, because if you're out for 4 hours, you're out for 4 hours. To say that, well, I only dashed 2 hours, you're just talking about like $1 or $2 worth of gas you didn't spend potentially, but it's still 4 hours of work. So I always refer to real time. But so in real time, I made more dashing than I have this entire calendar year per hour. Now, again, the late nights can be tough, and it was a weekend, but the rain and, usually the oversaturation doesn't even make it worth it. So I made more than that. And then I actually looked farther back. And the last time I had made that much an hour, the only 2 times I ever did was when Paratip Transparency was around. So shout out to David and my team at Para. Everybody was always so amazing. And those were some really hardworking people. Shout out to Gary Middleton and all the work he does for our safety. Because his apps are really primarily safety based. So, but we have states creating laws that are extremely short-sighted. We have full transparency, other details, pay, all are still missing on the apps. That solution alone and the removal of the acceptance rate on all platforms, if they take away acceptance rate, and I'm not talking about just don't show it to you, just don't have it. If they take that away, and if they show complete transparency, where you're picking up, where you're dropping off, all the details you need, and the full pay. If they do all that, all of their 90% of their lawsuits go away around the globe. So what is it about this black box system they have with the algorithm specifically designed around the transparency? They'll inch closer with regulators to, okay, we'll show them this and this. But like literally, I mean, I know there's some downsides, but I just, for the life of me, after this many years of doing this, I cannot understand how that is a better move for these companies than just to go to transparency and take away the acceptance rate. I mean, it blows my mind because none of these companies can make money. But if you look into their legal battles, so many of them come from it. The states that have already put in place laws reflecting of this, we can say Prop 22 in California, that one wasn't even supposed to happen that way because nobody predicted the pandemic coming when AB 5 took place. So Prop 22 accidentally included delivery drivers. It's a long story. If you haven't heard other pieces I've done with some of the experts, email me, steve@ridesharerodeo.com, or leave it in the comments below. I'm happy to answer everything. That's, the biggest thing I can say about Prop 22, like it or not at this point, is that you got 3 sides fighting it in California. You got the people who voted for it, but now don't want it. You got the people who never wanted it. And you got, the people who, and then you have all the voters who voted for, I mean, it's just a crazy mess. Constitutional challenges. The wasted money between the state of California and the Flex Association, Uber, Lyft, Instacart, DoorDash, all those, is just blowing my mind. I mean, the initiative alone in the ballot measure, but since then, they've just wasted millions upon millions of dollars. And for the California people, if whatever you are making in Prop 22, you're paying back in taxes for the fight that they're still doing. It's mind-blowing. But what else do we got? We got New York City. Well, New York City, it's failing big time with food delivery. They're having to block people out. They're starting to not allow walking. Walking in New York City for delivery to a lot of us in other cities, if you've never been to New York City, probably wouldn't make a lot of sense. But because in our city, maybe we don't need it at all or can't even understand how it would work even, maybe. But in New York City, it's kind of crucial, especially in the bad months. It's impossible to park. Yes, there's scooters and other things too, but there are people who walk, and they've taken that out because they got to pay them the active time. Well, now with the rideshare drivers, they have to pay the active time, but they have to pay the downtime too against a minimum wage, and we're not employees. So they've reverted to lockouts. Now they're striking the lockouts. And what happens next? I mean, like, how do you strike the lockouts? The company at this point has the right even to come out and say, listen, you wanted this. We told you, and they did. They literally, I mean, like it or not, I'm not cheering for the companies, but like it or not, they mapped this out and said, if this, then this, if this, then this. So they said, if this will happen. Less drivers will be able to be on the platform and earn. And then they take away the ability to tip, or they put it to like after the fact and after it's closed. So they've made it very hard because they want customers to think they're spending less. In Seattle, we'll take the businesses side. On the Seattle pay up legislation, we have businesses year to year through June of this year, so the first half of the year, down $12+ million in sales using the platforms. That's because of the pay up legislation. And yes, it's because of the gig apps, because they passed that bill along to the customer. It's gotten way too expensive. They've had to raise the menu item. We've talked about all this all over the channel. But I was trying to put together a good piece on the solutions. But the problem I kept running into is don't have enough time in 13 to do this. But I'm going to tell you guys something, because it just hit me like, why would I even do this on 13 this week? Because we're in the middle of doing something about this right now. So I've been working with drivers since a pair of days. I've got to know a ton. I've been working with lawmakers. I've been working with regulatory boards. I've been working with attorneys. I've had conversations and podcasts with CEOs and all kinds of people in these same mixes. So the best way that I can tell you how I wanted to reflect this piece correctly is Mike Hruby and I on the Be My Own Boss podcast, which goes on that channel on YouTube, as well as this channel every Monday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. It's 30 minutes long. We do a podcast, Be My Own Boss podcast. And right now we did eight episodes, and right now we are in a 6-part, like a mini series. 6 weeks of half hours leading to a complete conclusion people will understand. And everybody that's what we're going to be doing part 3 tomorrow. So you can already go back and watch part 1 and 2. They're already up. Part 3 is tomorrow, and then we got 3 more weeks left. But Mike already mapped them all out. They all match up to a half hour. Last week's was a little tough to fit in. I think we ran 32 minutes. But I'm going to give, one thing I'm going to do is tell you guys what we're doing, the names of the overall title of the mini series of 6, and each of the 6 episodes, which we haven't said yet, but I'm going to tell them to you today, because when this ends, it will all make a lot more sense on really what can be done by everybody. So the whole mini series is called the Boston Massacre 2024. It relates to Uber, Lyft there, but it also relates to all gig. Episode 1, Crushing Independent Work, the Attorney General's Settlement. Episode 2 from last week, The Murder Weapon, How ABC Labor Law Works. Episode 3, tomorrow, Tricks of the Trade, How ABC Labor Law Became a Trap. Episode 4, Career Theft Ahead, Damage from All Directions. Episode 5, Unfixable Law, Choose to Be Your Own Boss. And episode 6, I Get By with a Little Help from My Friends. And with that, everything will be understood. Join us or catch the replay. And that's 13 minutes of gig news in 13 minutes or less. Peace.